All right, so we've all jumped on board to just talk about, we want to clear up the narratives of, I guess, yeah, the differences of yoga and where Western kind of culture has taken it into like the perspective lane and the kind of creating our own concepts and views on things, and where things, I guess, lines have become blurred. And then what I guess us, Milan and I guess, yeah, we'll do some intros as well. What folks like us have learned along the way in trying to decondition ourselves and find what works for us and things like that. So yeah, we're just trying to clear up some things in terms of what is yoga and how it can really benefit the well-being of people. So yeah, let's start with you, Milan. Let's do a little intro, a little round of hey, hi, how are ya?
Intro. Well, my name is Milan. I am from California. I've been practicing yoga for over, I guess, 10 years now, but definitely always still a student, learning more and more as I go and how it relates to me in everyday life.
Right.
Amazing, amazing. Absolutely.
And Sid, brother, you've joined us as well, and made this beautiful catalyst between Milan and I. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm excited about this. I'm excited about the catalyst to happen, and it's good energy right now.
This is, by the way, Casey's podcast from now on.
Let's not make it rolling. We're making a roll.
Good.
But yes, Sid, brother, introduce yourself. Let us know. Let's do a little intro. We've obviously chatted before, but let's do a proper little intro where, yeah, we just let anybody that will be joining us early on in this journey. Yeah, I guess what a little bit about your journey, maybe like a little like three major things that have brought you on this path, kind of.
So again, growing up in India, I was introduced to yoga at a quite early age. My mom was a yoga teacher. My mom's grandfather was a yoga teacher. So from a very early age, yoga was always a part of our life, basically. Coming here in Australia, all of a sudden now, since everyone is talking about spirituality and yoga, so there's obviously a lot of awareness. And I can see there's a big void between classical yoga and modern yoga. And that should not be the case. So in fact, and this is how WKA Yoga Academy basically started, because more than teaching yoga, I think going forward, my biggest challenge in people who want to associate with me and the academy is to see how we can bridge this gap between classical yoga and modern yoga, because there should not be any gap. And there should be a single platform so more and more people can take full advantage of yoga. Now, most importantly, when it comes to yoga, since now even a layman can actually tell that, yoga is a system which is designed for your physiological and psychological well-being. But the third most important aspect of yoga, which is human consciousness, is largely missed out. And that's why we started this whole mission, this academy, and that's why we conduct all this workshop, and that's why we have started this podcast. And thanks for inviting me for this podcast, because we want to most importantly fix the narratives, especially the young generation who has started their journey in yoga. Because clearly they're always two directions, Now it's your personal choice if you want to take this particular direction or that particular direction. One direction is obviously incorrect, the other one is correct. So we want to make sure we put, yep.
Let's just pause there, just to make sure that it's clear, just for like, I guess if we're, yeah, want to assume that people who have no idea of yoga at all would be listening to this, like, what would those two, going into a bit more detail, what those two paths could be? Because obviously what we're talking about is creating a path that people can understand the more traditional ways of yoga and why there is a science, like a scientific base behind that, and like what that other path is and how maybe Western society has influenced that, where that diverging has come from.
Mainly, it's still, I can see it's, in our last podcast, we discussed about how people are still stuck with the physicality. And also, largely people think it's a really great philosophy, right? And in today's discussion, we're gonna talk about how yoga is not a philosophy, basically. Why thinking yoga as a philosophy can be harmful. So we'll try to explain in terms of, so when I say about two different paths, one path which says that yoga is nothing but science, it's a very profound science. Because traditionally in India, when we talk about yoga, we always refer yoga as a yoga shastra. Shastra means science. Mm-hmm. We also talk about Vastu Shastra, science of direction. We talk about Jyotirvidya, a science of cosmology. So in Indian teachings and Indian approach, we always look at things from a scientific point of view. So similarly, yoga is also a profound science. Now, when people start thinking it's a great philosophy, you're not getting the clear picture. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Because there's like like room for interpretation and like
there's plenty of room for interpretation. I'll give you a very small example. So for that, we need to basically go a couple of thousand years ago, and we'll see how yoga basically started traveling. You know what I mean? So at a very basic level, one thing we need to understand is when we talk about yoga, now we are talking about a system which was designed by these ancient sages from the Indian subcontinent, a system which was designed for your physiological and psychological well-being. These are the two main aspects, right? The third and the most important aspect is human consciousness, and this is what we are working on. So when this system, when it traveled from the Indian subcontinent to the Far East, to places like China and Japan, because back in those days, there was a strong relation between these two countries. There was transactions. People started coming and visiting India. A lot of scholars. There was a very famous university in the central part of India, in Bihar. So a lot of Eastern scholars and Eastern philosophers, they used to travel to India to visit these universities. And that's how yoga traveled to the Far East, and the subtler aspects of yoga, which we now call it as the chi, which they refer to as chi or the energy. So these are the very subtler aspects of yoga appeal to them. So at the end, I'll try to explain as to why just the subtler aspects appeal to the Eastern countries. So the same system, when it traveled to Far West, to place like America. So Swami Vivekananda, he was the one who basically introduced yoga to American countries in the year 1892, and that's how he took Raja Yoga to the United States of America.
And Raja Yoga was one of the earlier forms of yoga that was a bit more advanced, a bit deeper in its sciences.
Exactly right. So I think in the next podcast, we can cover in terms of what are the types of yoga. There's Raja Yoga, there's Bhakti Yoga, there's Jnana Yoga, all those things. So he basically, his book is very famous, which talks a lot about Raja Yoga. So he introduced Raja Yoga to the American people in 1892. So to the American people, the physical aspect of yoga appealed to them a lot. Because when they saw these yogis, even at the age of 75, 80, they were still strong. Without any medication, they could still perform all those things. So that thing really appealed to them. And they said, this is something really amazing. This is something which is worth investigating, and this is something which is worth practicing, right? because the physical aspect of yoga appealed to the American people. Now, the same system, when it traveled to the European countries, when they saw a yogi without any food, without any clothes, without any materialistic things, the guy is still blissed out and happy. So they thought, wow, it's such a wonderful philosophy. Now see why just the subtler aspects appeal to the Eastern people, why the physical aspect appealed to the American people, and why people in Europe started looking at yoga as a great philosophy. It all basically comes down to the culture of these countries. You know what I mean? Because when you look at European countries, you'll see everything is so beautiful. Arts, literature, architecture, everything is really wonderful. So to be able to achieve all those things, you obviously need to have creativity. You need to have a philosophical mindset. You know what I mean?
You have to have like a creative source that you're coming back to.
Exactly right. So for example, now if I go to an art studio, say for example, if I go to Picasso art studio, right? Now, if I get into the technicality of things, I can point out so many flaws in a painting. But once you start looking at it from a philosophical point of view, then there's no room for arguments, because that's the individual choice. That's his philosophy, how he wants to draw that picture. You can't be too technical. And that's the whole problem. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yoga's now become a bit more like philosophical, where we've gone, oh no, like you can totally have some beer during yoga. It relaxes you, and it's proven to be pretty chill. And when you add some goats, I mean,
exactly, doesn't get better.
Exactly. So, you know, that's how it all started. So when you have a philosophical mindset, and when you start practicing and looking at yoga as a great philosophy, then there's no limit. It's just off limit. You can do whatever, because that's my question. And we're not saying that, you know, being philosophical is wrong, but philosophy has a plenty of room when it comes to subjects like arts, literature, music, painting, everything. When it comes to yoga, now you need discipline. You need a lot of discipline, you know? So that's the whole idea of drawing their attention towards this, you know, single thing, that at least start looking at yoga not as a philosophy. Look, practicing yoga, you can have a positive philosophy towards life. That's another way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Yoga itself is a philosophy, is what is creating all this confusion and misunderstandings. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So at this stage, we want to basically fix the narratives. Only then person can take a right path. Now, I'll also give you a very small example. Martial arts, for example, when we talk about martial arts, what is the first thing which comes to your mind?
Karate.
Yeah, I immediately like kung fu.
Physical.
So these are all the why do we need to practice martial arts? If I have to ask you, what is the first thing which comes to your mind?
Oh.
I'm thinking of like energy management and like connection to that like energetic movement through the body, and like connecting that physical and energetic body to move through this experience, I guess, or something. Milan, what are you thinking, bro?
You know, the first thing that came to my mind was people that I know that have taken martial arts for self-defense. It's become like a protective, actually, I feel like when I think about practicing martial arts, that's energy, movement is not really what I first think of. I kind of think of it's more like the physical fighting aspect, unfortunately.
Yeah. No. I don't think that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
That's really good. Which I feel you on, because I actually like teach boxing to like young gals because I like the self-defense part of it. And like I think that is a huge part of it, especially in this day and age with like girls wanting to learn to be able to defend themselves. I think is like, yeah, becoming a very, because people are becoming more aware of it for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I went to China in the year 2017 with the same expectations to learn martial arts for self-defense.
Yeah.
You know, because that's the first thing which comes to your mind.
Yes.
All right. But I'll give you a small example. So I stayed in China, you know, at a classical temple, Shaolin temple. And so the daily routine was us waking up early in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, cleaning the school, doing so many things, going through an intense physical regime, right? And so the whole school was basically divided into two parts. So it was basically the teacher, my teacher, Ismail. So if someone who is more inclined towards, whose yin energy is more dominant, then they were introduced to subtler aspects of Kung Fu. For some students whose yang energy was more dominant, they were basically introduced to more harsher, you know, practices within Kung Fu. So on a daily basis, we would wake up early in the morning, and there was this particular process which was hardening. So day in, day out, we used to basically keep on hitting a bag which was filled with metal balls, and day in, day out, you just keep on hitting it, you know? After almost 6 months, our hands were like hammer-like. So I asked this dumb question to Ismat after almost 6 months of intense physical exercise, because someone had to ask this dumb question, so I took the initiative. I asked Ismat, I said, Ismat, with all this intense training, with all this hardening process which I've gone through, at this point, if I ever get into a situation where I have to confront someone, I can cause some serious damage, you know, if I really hit someone with these hands. So I asked him, you know, what do I do if I ever get into a situation like this? And to that, he said to me, you simply walk away, you run. And for the next couple of weeks, I then started thinking, with all this intense training, waking up 4 o'clock in the morning, doing so many things till late at night, you know, no break, no nothing. And now that I'm fully ready, so if I ever get into a situation, I can defend myself, I can hit the other guy and do so many other things. Because that was my strong expectation when I walked in there. And now you're telling me, now that I'm fully ready, you're asking me to walk away, run away. For me, it was like a cowardly act, you know, like, but then he explained me the whole story. He said, the whole practice of Kung Fu is self-discipline. So the whole idea of you walking away from that situation, knowing that you can actually cause harm to the other guy, you walking away from that situation is the real strength. Whereas you reacting to a situation and throwing the first punch is your weakness.
Yeah.
So, so yoga also is, you know, when we talk about yoga, when everyone thinks about physicality, it's not. Yoga is, you know, needs a great form of discipline to be able to experience the other dimensions of yoga. That's pretty much what we're trying to do at this stage. We want to fix the narratives. Only then people, especially the young generation, because right now what's happening is, see the same problem, even Guruji, BKS Iyengar. So BKS Iyengar, he really made yoga very popular in the Western countries, you know, but he realized there was a lot of ignorance. There was a lot of ignorance. Even now, ignorance has multiplied, but at the same time, there's a lot of arrogance.
Absolutely.
So, which is why,
what a combination.
Forward, exactly. which is why going forward, our job, more than teaching yoga, will be to fix the narrative. We want to be like a gap. We want to be like a bridge between classical yoga and modern yoga, because we want to create a single platform so that more and more people can come on board and more people can take the full advantage of yoga. The other thing is, with all this diversity in yoga, see, diversity was never an issue. It all started with a very good intention. You know, people started coming to India, you know, sages started teaching yoga. Yoga went all over the world, and now it's becoming really popular. So diversity is not an issue. Diversity can never be an issue in yoga. Nor did we ever object towards the selective approach of yoga. For example, for some, the subtler aspects of yoga appeals. For some, the physical aspects of yoga appeals. But there has to be a single common vocabulary, and that is the human consciousness. If we all can come to that single point, then going forward, and this is what we need in the 21st century, so that more and more people get conscious, more and more people can take the full advantage of yoga. There has to be a single platform.
I think what's pulling people away from that is there's no, the idea that they are taking their own concepts and their own philosophies for yoga, and they're pulling towards the more, I think a lot of Western societies are pulling towards the more physical side of things, because of, you know, social media and well, gathering events such as like beer yoga and goat yoga. Like it's a fun thing to do for people now, and it's almost an excuse for themselves to say, oh, well, we're not just getting together to drink beer like usual, we're doing beer yoga, so like it's better, you know what I mean? But within this, there's no evolution of consciousness, there's no actual personal growth, and so there's no genuine connection to the core of what yoga is supposed to be. There's no change in the self, and so it's like, well, no, I've tried yoga. No, you've tried yoga with a port, you know, it's not the same. It's not going to give you any kind of fulfillment or anything like that. And I think that the troubles and the fear with that is that taking it that easier route and being able to adjust things, you pull away from the core of what you just said, the discipline. We can take away all the difficult bits, and then taking away the discipline takes away the core of it, meaning that, you know, you're not strengthening the mind, you're keeping the mind weak and fostering this like, oh, life can just be whatever I adjust to, and everything's accepted and everything's okay, where, and it's like, some things, it's not that it's not accepted, you just have to do the hard work of pushing through the difficult path. Like, and with the, like us, or kung fu and yoga as well, like the asanas, the physicality of it is just to get past the physical discipline, to get to, like you said, the subtler parts, which is actually the harder parts, is the mental game of coming at the other side disciplined.
Absolutely. And you know, with all these different directions which yoga is taking, I'm really upset because all those so-called yoga organizations, you know, I see no efforts made by this organization to bring in the discipline, to bring in the standards. You know, as long as you pay them the membership fees, they're happy.
Yeah, even for the people that really care and really want to make the difference.
Yeah.
Like, Milan, how has that affected you as like as someone going through obviously the Western world, trying to find the truth of yoga? Like, how's that affected your journey and trying to like find the truth?
Oh, that means going to a lot of different yoga studios, having a lot of different teachers, and actually ultimately, when I was living at home more recently, just doing my own practice, just kind of ending up doing it on my own and by myself, just to find that sort of headspace that I wanted to be in. Yeah, it's pushed me towards that mostly. I haven't joined any beer yoga or goat yoga, but I have seen plenty of it, and yeah, I see that. I see exactly what you were saying, how people were like, oh, but I'm not just gonna go have a beer or like champagne. I'm gonna
Yeah.
go drink champagne and do downward dog, so it's fine.
Yeah, exactly,
Oh,
exactly.
okay.
And then I think like that is like one way I understand the marketing side of things, because people think in this Western world, well, we need to make it appealing to
Yeah.
people, so maybe at least that gets their foot in the door. But then the problem is it gets their foot in the door in the wrong light. It's like dating somebody and being like, oh my gosh, yeah, like I love vegan lifestyle when you're going to KFC every weekend, like, or what, you know,
Yeah.
you're dressing it up to be something that it's not, and so you're inviting the wrong energy in. I think for
Mhm.
young gals like us trying to like find that like truth of it, to try and find like an ancient way of a certain kind of an art, that can be really frustrating. And you do often, I feel like the same path for me kind of happened. You end up with in your own practice, because everywhere you
Mm.
go, it's like, even if you find a little bit of the truth, somebody's just really excited to tell you how much more spiritual they are. And like there starts
Yeah.
being this weird, like, I feel like Western culture really tries to take this power dynamic where,
Competition.
yeah, I know more yoga
Mm.
than you know. And you're like, okay.
Sorry. And
Yeah.
actually, I think that kind of plays into something also like in the Western world, or maybe just specifically in the United States. But I think that yoga also has sort of a connotation with like being a very privileged practice.
Mm-hmm.
Like that yoga is not looked at for everyone. For like the diversity in the United States of people doing yoga, I would say is mostly white. It's like
Yeah.
mostly a privileged white practice that a lot of people look at as like, oh no, I don't do that, I don't. And I'm not really sure why, but I think it's just because of maybe accessibility issues.
Yeah.
The resources are just not there for everyone. But
It's still seen as like Pilates bar studio kind of thing that you can go and do as like a form of exercise, but it's gonna cost you $50 a sesh, or $50 for a class
exactly.
pass.
Wow, I wasn't
Yeah.
aware of that. That shouldn't be the case. In fact, and which is why, part of our mission and the activities, the kind of activities which we do going forward. In fact, I'm currently working on this, how we can actually, most importantly, standardize yoga, how we can make sure that yoga is accessible to pretty much everyone.
Mm.
We're trying to,
Mm.
we're trying to create this sort of ecosystem. We want to create an ecosystem where everyone is welcome.
Mhm.
We'll put them, most importantly, on the right path by giving strong foundational knowledge.
Yes.
And then most of the benefits yoga comes from experience. We leave it up to, we're not going to lead them into a completely blank space where we start giving them imaginary, because I see there's a lot of schools with certain promises and methods of, when you do this kundalini, when you see all this cloud, you feel like you're floating in cloud line, you feel like you're doing this. You're not going to make all these false promises.
Yeah.
We're going to give them methods which are 100% scientific in nature. We're going to set them on the right path. We're going to make sure that the standards of yoga are maintained. And then we simply let go. We're still going to hold their hands so that they don't get lost. But we want to, most importantly, let them to experience, because most of the things in yoga should be experiential, and that's what we're gonna stress upon. So I think perhaps it's better to, obviously, in terms of what this is just the beginning in terms of what we're doing right now, is trying to educate more and more people. Sooner or later, we'll have this space which we discussed in Sunshine Coast.
Yeah, hopefully have that space soon. But I think like, yeah, being able to have like well, obviously we're gonna go on the route of getting online and things like that, but it'll be really amazing to have a platform where people can come
Yes.
like Milan and I, people like us, and then obviously from all different kinds of walks of life too, can come and have access to that genuine knowledge and education, and know that this is like a resourceful spot. Because like, yeah, man, the internet's full of silver-tongued devils and all kinds of people that just want to tell you
That is
things
one
that they know, and it's not necessarily knowledge. It's more like made up knowledge.
Yeah.
There's no harm in flashing a particular pose and all these things, but it's just taken to a really ridiculous form and shape. And that's why I keep on stressing is, this yoga, so-called yoga organizations, they're not taking any efforts to basically criticize some of those things. And I don't see any efforts made by, these organizations to come out and say this, what kind of yoga? I mean, you can cuddle the goat and you can do certain things, and after the yoga class you can go and have a beer and all those things. The problem is when you start calling it as yoga, you're basically confusing people. You're causing a lot of confusion. You're keeping people away from the reality.
Yeah.
So at least some efforts needs to be made. I mean, going forward, we're not here to criticize anyone. Our main job is to basically educate people so that people who are now started their journey, at least they can make a choice. If you're seeking real knowledge, if you're seeking real benefits, choice is yours. An individual always has two choices. All this time, they didn't knew what the other choice was. So the other choices, either you have an authentic, a strong platform, and these are the benefits. This is the things which we give you for you to be able to experience some of those things. Otherwise, there are other forms where you'll basically just be lost. I mean, even B.K. Iyengar came across so many students. He used to come and visit him in India, going back to their countries and doing wrong practices. They never used to get the full benefit out of it. And Guruji kept on educating them that this is not how it's done. So most of his time, apart from teaching yoga, was to basically address the ignorance. But today we have to address the ignorance as well as arrogance at the same time.
Yeah.
We're trying to give people a genuine scientific benefit. We're not just trying to help people feel good and floaty brained and a little bit more limber in the muscles. We're genuinely trying to, or not necessarily us in particular, but yeah, yoga in itself is a way, and like you said, a system in which you can apply to your life to scientifically better your physical well-being so that your mental and energetic well-being are fulfilled within this lifetime. This is not just a form of exercise or a cool thing to be able to post online. This is genuinely a way to watch our society develop and grow and essentially become a better species, a more exciting species, a more colorful existence. This is not just cardio.
Yeah.